Irish music has had a presence in America beginning around colonial times when many Irish immigrants first arrived in the United States. After doing much research, I discovered that the history of Irish American music has had an interesting path, largely beginning during the Irish immigration to New York City, where many Irish musical artists arrived. Many first and second generation immigrants became interested in the music, learning the tunes and jigs from their acquaintances and family. This led to the widespread interest of Irish American music by Americans from diverse backgrounds. Overall, this project attempts to pick apart the history of traditional Irish music in the United States in order to predict its future path. I'll begin by giving a very brief history of the background of traditional Irish music in the United States, and then move on to what it means to those who are currently playing it and where it may lead in the future. New York City was the center of the golden age of Irish music in the 1890s. Traditional musicians were considered very energetic members of a minority who favored some cultural persistence. There seemed to be a need to be accepted and assimilated within American culture, yet remain Irish and proud of where they came from. Playing traditional tunes served as a great reminder of immigrants' homelands, stirring intense emotions and visuals of their past. In addition, throughout the 1900s, Irish musicians were encouraged to make music a part of the Irish-American self-concept. This was difficult because many had their Irish identity revolve around Catholicism, leaving little room for other identity development. Irish music served as a way to bring people back to their roots. The 1920s and 30s were dominated by recording artists who began recording their music, making these tunes even more popular and accessible to Americans across the country. This sparked the careers of many famous artists, such as Jim Morrison, Packy Dolan, and Michael Coleman, who was an Irish immigrant from County Sligo that moved to New York City and became arguably the most influential fiddler in the world. Many credit his success as a result of the records he made for the Columbia record label in the 1920s. The Great Depression and World War II took a toll on traditional Irish American music throughout the 1940s. Much of the traditional sounds were kept afloat by showband culture and performers. Such performers like Jack Cohen and Paddy O'Brien were responsible for teaching Irish music to Americans during these times. The 1960s and 70s were revitalized by another round of Irish immigrants to the United States, who brought their traditions and musical talent. Some artists during this time include Jerry O'Sullivan, Liz Carroll, and Annie McGann. These musicians are known today for reinstilling traditional Irish roots back to Irish American music. One sector of Irish acoustic music during the 1960s and 70s was deeply influenced by this American folk revival. There was an Irish feel to American folk and country music, which in turn became a major influence upon Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan is now considered the frontrunner of the American folk revival. The 80s brought new sound and feel to Irish music. Cherish the Ladies and the Pogues were popular bands during this time. The late 20th century was a time where Irish rock emerged, bringing up bands like Flogging Molly and the Dropkick Murphys. So that's a very extremely quick and toned down history of Irish American music and the influence endured to become what it is today. A large part of my interview with the Carac was focused around the roots of traditional Irish music and where the future of this art seems to be heading today. Irish music has evolved over time through content and instruments. This band played many of the same tunes that collectively crystallized in Ireland long ago, involving the same core repertoire of jigs, reels, and hornpipes, yet adding new instruments and sounds. I would like to play a few of my interview questions to further explain where Irish American music is today and where it's heading in the future. So I'm really interested in how you guys got into creating traditional Irish music and where you guys draw your inspiration from.
Well, for me, actually, compared to everybody else, I'm late to the game. I mean, I was a metal drummer and a pipe band drummer and stuff. And we went to Ireland. My wife and I, kids, went to Ireland. Heard the music, and my wife became very enamored with it. You wouldn't know that anymore. But
now she's into horses.
But I actually kind of had just started playing boron, but having been a drummer, it came rather naturally, and happened to meet a guy at a session. The guy says, "Hey, why don't you play a couple of things with me?" So I played a few things with him. He had played with Dahi in a another band. And he called Dahi up and he said, "How'd you like to be in a band? I found this." I assume all he said was, "I found this boron player, and we can work at Broken." And that was 9 years ago.
Something big that we talked about in class was people who are very concerned about keeping the music traditional.
Oh, good question.
And not like people have their own set of views, like don't play this music if you're gonna mess around with it and change it from its original roots, whatever. How do you guys feel about that? And do you just stick to traditional music, or do you kind of add your own influence on it?
I would say for the most part, we lean further toward the traditional than the innovative. So, in fact, Turner, who started this group, he used to call it the pure drop, which is the sort of an expression that talks about like, the real traditional stuff. But on the other hand, we are not afraid of doing something a little different. Like we're not so stuck in like history that we're like a museum, like a frozen in time or something like that.
I'm interested on where you guys personally see traditional Irish music going in the future, with the direction that it's headed now. Do you see that it's going to be kind of staying towards its roots? Whatever you argue Irish traditional music is, a lot of people have different ideas of that, but
Sure.
Or do you think that it's just kind of going to fade away? Hopefully
Well,
not.
it is,
Yeah,
to some extent.
that is true.
I think what's exciting to me is with YouTube and with all these different things. Every week or two, Darryl posts something of some 10-year-old or 16-year-old like brilliant musician playing this stuff, and I'm like, that makes me know that this music is going to stay alive.
It's not going to change.
Yeah.
Plus, there's an entire system. Is it FLA?
The FLA.
FLA.
Which
FLA.
is the competition system.
Competition system.
Yeah.
So that is very traditional.
Yeah, but a lot of professional Irish musicians like you, like Kevin Crawford, they do it before.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Bolton does say this is how you
They
Right.
say it's
Right.
yeah. But what I was going to say is that not only are there young people playing this music, which makes me know that it's still vibrant and alive and is not dying out, but also lots of people are writing new tunes and playing them that are in the traditional style, but you wouldn't know that they, which has been the history all along, which is kind of what Steve was getting at, was like, you can't just pick a point in time, like, in 1925 and say, well, this is traditional music, because every tune that we play, somebody made it up. It didn't come out of the ether, And so, so there's no such thing as like traditional music like that just came from nowhere. I mean, a lot of the tunes have names to them, named after either the person that played it or the person that made it popular.
Right.
So I'd say about like a third of the tunes we play, are called like, Billy's or Sean's or
Fahey
Joe
or
Ryan's or whatever.
Geordie's.
And and it's like, and I'm always surprised to find out that some of the tunes in our repertoire that we think are traditional were only written, like 30, 40 years ago, like Christmas Eve or something.
Yeah.
Like, those aren't that old. And so I think, the repertoire is still traditional, but it's not like it's stagnant. It's still growing and changing, and it's, like I said, it's just so fun to see young people, playing this and being awesome.
Right.
So I've come to the conclusion that traditional Irish music is not going anywhere. It will remain ingrained within our society, and it will forever be evolving and changing through individuals, yet remain close to its roots.